right, welcome into episode number 12 of Unsafe Spaces. I'm Randy Cross. I want to thank you for joining us and to encourage you to like, share, copy, forward, do whatever, have your way with this podcast. I'd like to get this thing in front of as many people as possible. Really appreciate it. And if there's any content in here that you'd like to address or any suggestions you may have, send those to producer@unsafespacesusa.com. Alrighty. Well, let's move right along and we'll go into sort of the week that was. It's so calming, so reassuring, unlike most of the stuff that happened this week, which was a little bit of a crazy time when it came to that. So let's go through some of that in a video montage we've put together as to what happened in this last week. Kicking things off when it comes to this past 7-day period since last we met. Yeah, this little bundle of joy. Sort of North Korea's version of Tyrion Lannister from Game of Thrones. It's he just, why get too crazy about this guy? And I mean crazy in the nicest of ways. It's going to be a threat off between this guy and our president, Donald Trump, and our defense minister, our Secretary of Defense, and our generals and everybody else. But this will dominate the news. And the one thing that you are going to learn, we did learn this last week, was that we knew in 2013 that they had miniaturized the bomb to be able to put it on a rocket. Kind of would have been nice to know about that. Not that you really need to know about that, because that's something you kind of worry about, because this is going back to the Cold War days of building bunkers and all that other stuff, which basically do nothing but delay the inevitable for you. But yeah, this Kim Jong-un guy is going to stay in the news, and he's more than just a little bit on the nuts side. Next up in the stories parade here is something that I'm going to devote time to, because you know what, damn it, I love Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, fantastic. We saw dragons. Daenerys was riding her dragon. She was kicking some serious ass, as were her dragons. This is an older shot from them dealing with ships. Well, they dealt a lot more harshly with armies and loot trains and things like that in this last episode. That's a lot of fun. I love this show. They do a fantastic job. Unfortunately, there's only 7 episodes of this thing this year, and we're already more than halfway through, so it should be nonstop. Well, just nonstop action from here on out. There's going to be a war between HBO and some hackers, because the hackers have gotten into these executive emails, and they've done everything. And Jon Snow is threatening this guy here, but you know, they've gotten emails. They've threatened to leak what the episodes are going to be about. They threatened to leak the trailers. It's going to be a pretty good war between HBO and these guys, because they seem to have gotten some pretty legit information out of this hack. All right. The week in baseball, to me, pretty doggone good. And that would feature, like you saw earlier, Bryce Harper, Mike Trout. They played this week. Just amazing stuff. 2 extremely talented baseball players. You know, they are doing things now to 1,000 hits at as young an age as anybody has been. The amount of homers they've already hit in their careers. We had Andre Beltre last week or two set a 3,000 hit mark for himself in his career. But these are the 2 best young baseball players in professional baseball, and they're separated by basically a whole country. One's in Anaheim, one's in D.C. playing for the Nationals. But Mike Trout and Bryce Harper, fantastic to keep track of. Next up, yeah, this guy. What an ass clown this guy is. Rahm Emanuel, the mayor of Chicago, is threatening to sue the United States over this whole controversy, could you call it, about sanctuary cities and them taking away their federal dollars. There's an easy solution to this. Don't break the law, and the government will give you the money. How about that, Rom? And how about you worry about the people that live in your city? How about you worry about all the people that are being shot? Over 300 already this year have been murdered in his city. And summer's not even over. It's bizarre that this person would worry about this to this extent, but there's a reason guys like Rahm Emanuel and Bill de Blasio are in power in cities like Chicago and New York. They sell people on panic. They sell people on these little micro problems and microaggressions. This is completely asinine in my mind. Next up on the week that was news-wise, I don't know how aware that you were, but Spike Lee's trying to put a rally together for Colin Kaepernick. Two things happened when he did this. One, he officially threatened to push Colin Kaepernick into the category of the New York Knicks, who are totally hopeless. And I guess if you get a rally for him, you could also be totally hopeless. But if you look behind he and Reed, the safety from San Francisco, they spelled Kaepernick's name wrong. K-A-P-E-R. Now there's a K-A-E-P in there in his real name. So I would start there. Showing that you care about a guy like this, great news. Showing you know how his name spell, probably the next logical step. And they couldn't get past that. So my guess is Spike Lee does for Colin Kaepernick exactly what he did for the New York Knicks, which is absolutely nothing. Next up on what happened this last week, China's having war games. Logical? Yeah. North Korea, should they be having war games? Yeah. We're practicing a little bit, but China's having war games. And that should concern North Korea mainly. Because they have been getting the message that we're not kidding. And those are Chinese naval vessels right there. If you see that aircraft carrier, the front of it, the bow goes up in the air. But they're not the only ones having war games. Camp Grayling in northern Michigan, 6 nations are practicing at Northern Strike Exercise. Now, not just any 6 nations. There's the U.S., there's our ATTIC, Canada. There's their former ruler, the UK, England. There's also Denmark, Latvia, and Poland involved here. So good to see the EU and certain other countries like Latvia and Poland getting involved and having fun with the boys and playing a little war up there in northern Michigan. You can't practice that enough because eventually you're not practicing, you're actually doing it. Now, next up on the parade, news-wise, North Korea, missile-ready nuclear weapons. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier when we talked about North Korea. No. They're not doing this now, which was a surprise to everyone that in 2017 they could do that, put a nuclear weapon on top of a rocket. It's another thing to be able to have it survive re-entry and all those other issues. But supposedly, they passed this mark in 2013. So there's a great chance they've already gotten past that reentry stuff. And that's maybe why they laugh so hard when they show the videos of them being successful. Because there's so much more along on the curve than most people think. Definitely most people would be included in the American public because I don't think anybody knew that they'd already miniaturized those weapons as of 2013. How about this? California GOP congressman goes and has a town hall. And how was he greeted? Well, you see that quote there. May you die in pain. Let's just say they're not real happy. They're not happy about the stance that La Malfa has taken. Chico, California is in the San Joaquin Valley, in the Central Valley of California. This Heather Callan, a voter in La Malfa's district, dressed up as a wicked witch of the West Coast in this case, not happy. And I think a lot of members of Congress, both in the House and the Senate, are going to see a lot of this when they go home, because the non-working Jessies are going home a lot more than they should. So they should be at a lot more of these things, and people are greeting them. May you die in pain. How about starting with, may you have the same kind of health insurance that all of us have to have? Because I've currently been going through this whole thing with health insurance. Not great options, and not the easiest thing to understand for most people. Aetna pulling out on Obamacare. Just another one. The rates are going to keep going up. States are going to be eliminated as people that will be able to have them. 70% of the counties where it offers the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, they're leaving. Not good. Not good. And, when you say it's disintegrating, one of the reasons it's disintegrating is the companies can't afford to stay in that business the way it's currently written. That might tell you a little something about it having to be changed. But don't tell guys like Mitch McConnell that we have unrealistic expectations, like the president. Because, I don't know, they've just been talking about it for 7 years, and now they're going to freaking not fix it. Good going, boys. Let's wait until the premiums for everybody go up over 100, 150, 200%. And that'll really make everybody extremely happy. Real quick here, I'd like to do a small, brief monologue. It's my annual rant on this subject, and it's something that is near and dear to my heart. And I guess part of it's consumer protection. Part of it has to do with consumer fraud. And that is the NFL preseason. And every team plays 4 preseason games. Some teams play an extra one. But you get in a situation where you buy tickets if you're a season ticket holder. So you have 10 home games, 8 regular season games, full price and should be. 2 preseason games, full price, shouldn't be, but you're being ripped off. You've always been ripped off. You are currently being ripped off. If they reduce preseason games to 2 overall and only 1 at home, you're still being ripped off. They're charging 100% value for something that at its best is 50% value. Yeah, you'll see the draft picks. Yeah, you'll see some of the veteran free agents. But mainly, you're watching after, opener, first half or so of the opener, you're seeing real football. Third week, for about 3/4 of the game, you're seeing real football. Game 2 and game 4, total, utter garbage. You could settle these problems in personnel on the practice field and not have to go through these ridiculous preseason games, these exhibition games, whatever you want to call them. I just call it fraud and a complete consumer ripoff. Thank you. Joining me now is Dennis Dodd, the senior college football columnist for CBSSports.com. Dennis, thanks for joining me.
Randy, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, this is the perfect time of year for you. I mean, we go from media days to, it seems like this year at least, right after those ended, guys were going to camp. They were starting to practice, and right now we're looking at a countdown as to when things start. This year, for something unusual, there's not a week 1 per se. There's a week 0 before there's a week 1.
Yeah. We've got Rice and Stanford in Sydney, Australia, among others. I think Colorado State opens its new stadium, but it's the appetizer. It's the antipasta, I guess, before the main meal.
Yeah, that Colorado State game is against Oregon State. Aaron Taylor will be at that one, and then I've got the USF, Charlie Strong and company, going out to San Jose State. So it's just a weird deal. I keep seeing it on the schedule, and it's always it's referred to as week 0, and I'm like, what the hell's a week 0? In the NFL, don't they call those preseason games?
Yeah, which brings to mind the topic that could actually happen in college.
Oh no! Please don't say that.
Why not? Come on.
Fans have a chance to pay full price for games that don't count. Oh boy, what fun!
Yeah, well, we need more football. We need more college football.
Yeah. What kind of a year, Dennis, do you think we're looking at in college football, or is this again one of those years that we spend a lot of energy trying to create scenarios, but when it all comes down to it, it's the same 25, 30 teams that are going to be in the mix, and in those 25, 30, it's usually the same, 8 or 10.
Yeah, I'll go you one better. I think you can throw a blanket around the top 10, whatever yours may be, because it's probably the same as mine. And that's going to be your 4 playoff participants. It's really going to be chalk this year. Someone asked me to pick the biggest, playoff contender outside my top 10. My 11th team is Kansas State. I don't think Kansas State's going to be in the playoff. After that, it was Stanford. I don't think Stanford is. I think they're going to be really, really good, but I don't think they're going to be one of the top 4 teams in the country. I sort of settled on Wisconsin, which kind of wins the Big Ten West every year.
Right.
But can you envision them getting into the top 4? I don't know, maybe.
Nah.
But
Nah.
Alabama, Florida State, Oklahoma, the same schools we've been used to these first 3 years in the playoff, I think are going to be in some form and fashion in it this year.
Yeah, I was on Gio and Jones with Brian Jones yesterday on CBS Sports Radio, and I was sort of having a little laugh at his expense where he asked me what the top 5 was, my top 5.
Yeah.
And I said, well, outside of the top 4, what does it matter?
Right.
Why even give you a 5th team? Because, that's just the first team out.
Yeah. Alabama, Florida State, who did I have? Oklahoma, maybe.
Yeah.
Not LSU. But
Do you give Dabo? You give Dabo a chance?
I don't, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
And that sounds like they're terrible. No, they're a top 10 team. Arguably a top 10 team. You don't lose Deshaun Watson and Mike Williams and Jordan Leggett and Gallman, the running back, and go 14-1 or 15-0. You just don't.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to be favored in the ACC. They do get Florida State at home, so that's going to be a factor. But in what is now, in my humble opinion, the best college football conference in the country, I don't think it's reasonable to expect Clemson to repeat even getting back in the playoff, much less winning. I think they're really good, though. They've arrived. They're a national program.
Yeah, Dabo, my impression on Clemson is pretty simple. Dabo has, in a fairly short period of time, done a hell of a copy of that Alabama program.
Yeah.
From a talent stocking standpoint.
Yeah. Every great defensive lineman or every other great defensive lineman that doesn't go to Alabama seems to end up at Clemson. And if you're stocked with a front 7, you've got a chance. And that's what really led them last year. They had some great offensive weapons, but they were in a class where, even in a game, the championship game that featured 66 points.
Right.
That and the fact that Clemson was able to hold the ball and run 99 plays was the difference of the game. And a lot of that defensive line is back. And he talks about that. Dabo talks freely about that. He gets it. It's a line of scrimmage league in the SEC. And Clemson and Florida State, let's face it, to me are the 15th and 16th SEC teams. They run their programs exactly like an SEC school in terms of emphasis, funding, talent, recruiting, winning, and that's what's happened. That's benefited the ACC to the point where I just mentioned. I think they're the best in ball right now.
How about out in the Pac-12? Obviously, that's kind of close to my heart. I played in the ancient, will not be named Pac-8. Just to fully qualify me in dinosaur status.
Right.
But USC is mentioned. They're on everybody's lips. Stanford is on most people's lips. Washington is. I see it as sort of begrudgingly being mentioned, though. Chris Peterson, you discount him at your own peril. Outside of those teams, Is there a chance a UCLA or a Washington State or somebody like that sort of rears their head this year?
Yeah, I would say no on the outset. I think, UCLA has, I think, like 15 starters back, a bunch of receivers, Josh Rosen. But it can be argued that, Jim Moore's window of opportunity is all but closed at UCLA in terms of vaulting itself past USC. He comes in 5 years ago, they're on probation. They don't have enough players on scholarship. I think he wins the first 2 or 3 meetings. And now USC is a top 5 team. So they're going to have to get past them in that division, which I don't think is going to happen. I think it is. I think it is very interesting that you've probably got the best battle for LA in terms of quarterbacks between Rosen and Sam Darnold since Rodney Peete and Troy Aikman in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
You've got maybe the 1-2 quarterbacks in the draft, or 2-3, or whoever. That's going to be fun to watch. But I don't think UCLA is that team. I don't think Washington State's that team. I think I love Mike Leach. I think he's maxed out there, winning 9 and 8 the last 2 years. And Washington has left the barn, and they've left everybody behind, in my opinion, in the North. Stanford's going to win 9 at least every year. But Washington, I think, from here on, is a perennial top 10 team in the country. Mm-hmm. And the best thing about the Pac-12 race this year is that USC and Washington don't meet. So that championship game, which looks like pencil it in, folks, USC-Washington, is going to be for a playoff spot. I think that's fascinating and really fun.
Yeah, it could be like a 4-6 or something like that by the time it happens. How about over in the Big Ten? The Big Ten spends a lot of time beating their chest and telling people that they're the best conference in the country. Is this as much of a, I guess, kind of a fair year for the Big Ten? And I only mean fair from the standpoint as, they do have some really good teams. In Penn State, you mentioned Washington kind of being back. Penn State's back.
Yeah, Penn State's in that conversation with USC in terms of being back. I think that Rose Bowl proved that when we saw all kinds of skill on that field, and maybe one of the best Rose Bowls ever. And I think what we really have to do now is reevaluate what we all think of James Franklin as a coach. He's taken Vanderbilt to back-to-back 9-win seasons, 2 9-win seasons. He's won the Big Ten. People almost forget that.
Yeah.
Ohio State got in the playoff, but Penn State won the league.
How much sense does that make?
They beat Ohio State,
I know.
Fair and square. And we talk about the rock star coaches in Meyer and Harbaugh. Franklin is now in there. And they're going to be really loaded on offense in, again, a division that is right there with the SEC West in terms of strength. I think the interesting, and you're right, the Big Ten is very good. There was a few years ago where we made fun of it. Hey, they can't get speed there. They can't recruit from the South. It's the Rust Belt. Well, that's all been disproven. Harbaugh and Meyer made everybody get better. To the point now where moribund Purdue hired Jeff Brom, who I think is a rising star as a head coach. I'm not saying they're going to be a factor this year. I think he's going to be really, really good, though.
They're going to be entertaining as hell. I know that with Jeff coaching.
They are. Michigan, I thought it played out before our eyes at the media days. Jim Harbaugh is now becoming a bit of a cartoon, a caricature of himself. He dressed in game day gear. They took the team photo of all the coaches. Yeah. He was the only one not in a suit. He wore the khakis, the Jumpman sweater, the hat, the Woody Hayes glasses. And that might have been fun the first time, but now it's starting to get towards, okay, when are you going to finish above third in the SEC East? And I think there's people in Michigan starting to ask that.
Yeah.
When are you going to beat Ohio State? He's 1-3 against Ohio State and Michigan State. Well, that's going to have to improve against the backdrop of a, this is going to be a fallback year for Michigan. They have the fewest starters back of any team in the country, 5. 1 on defense. And that doesn't include Rashawn Gary, who had the 5-star defensive lineman, who had a really good freshman season. So I think those are subplots. Ohio State should be favored and should win.
Now, the Big 12, or what used to be the Big Two and the little 10
Mm-hmm.
and everything else, all the other fun jokes. Big 12 has got some good Oklahoma teams. Kansas State might be okay. Texas, I still got to think, in my way of thinking at least, is kind of an if and a maybe. Where is the Big 12 when you start measuring them against others?
They're pretty good. They don't do a very good job of controlling, put that message out there or controlling the message. They let the summer narrative from Paul Feinbaum be, well, the league's going to break up in 5 years. Well, not when half the league is in the preseason top 25.
Right.
Not when Tom Herman is at Texas. And I'm not saying right now, but they're on solid footing now. Not when Texas is spending $220 million on facilities because of the promise of Tom Herman. And by the way, Oklahoma State might have the best offense in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be enough to win that league. In fact, I have them in front of Oklahoma just because of the coach transition with Bob Stoops and Lincoln Riley. Lurking in the background is Kansas State. I don't think you can pick them any lower than third. Bill Snyder and coming off throat cancer, I think they're a solid number 3 team. West Virginia won 10 last year and has a pretty good run-pass combination with Will Grier, the old Florida quarterback, and a bunch of receivers. That's a good place to start in the Big 12. So they're pretty good.
Yeah,
they're not a laughingstock. I think it's going. I really hope the Lincoln Riley, Tom Herman rivalry develops into that sort of like a 10-year war with Ohio State and Michigan, because for that league to be good long term, Texas and Oklahoma need to be good at the same time.
How much more would it have helped Lincoln Riley and that OU program if that change had happened after the bowl game? Something like, very, very quickly after the season.
I know what you're saying. People questioned the timing, but then it came like June 7th, I think it was.
Yeah.
But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, what's wrong with the timing? The hay's in the barn. You're in off-season conditioning. Recruiting is done. You're in that dead period before the season starts, the preseason starts. I thought the timing was okay, and I take Bob Stoops at his word. I think he just thought it was time, and then this is June 7th. It's not going to hurt the program. Lincoln Riley was being developed as the next coach anyway. The administration loved him. Bob Stoops loved him. The quarterbacks and the players liked him. They just, I think they all expected it to be in 5 years or so. That's the thing. Can he, as the youngest coach in ball at age 33, keep this thing going? We shall see.
The big picture in college football seems year in and year out, at least since we went to this 4-team playoff, isn't so much honing the 4-team playoff. It's always been, well, why aren't we doing 6? Why aren't we doing 8? Why aren't we doing more? Why isn't it more fair to everybody involved? Will there ever be a system? You're never going to see a 64 team like the basketball side. Yeah. But will there ever be a point where people will look at it and go, you know what? We will really identify our best national champion with this system.
Yeah, I mean, down the line, I really think the CFP will go through its 12-year run. Mm-hmm. Whatever, I think it's 2025 at the last game, 2026 January.
Okay.
I think it'll go through there. I thought it was interesting that this week the CFP actually renewed its physical lease in Irving, Texas, in an office building until 2025, which is curiously when the contract ends. Mm. So they're all in. There's like a 6-year look in, not for the structure, but for the participating bowls themselves. So there will be some I guess movement there, at least maybe with the bowls, not with the structure. Everybody's making money. I had a TV executive tell me once that, look, there's no certainty if they go to 8, this thing gets better ratings. There's every chance that a Alabama Cincinnati game in on campus in snow, is not well attended, and I'm using that as an example. And what would not do a great number is quarterfinals. I don't know if I agree with that, But we've seen these TV and CFP executives mismanage New Year's Eve to the point that you saw the 2 years ago, the 36% ratings drop. So there are sensibilities here. I think it creates drama with one Power Five at least being left out every year. We now know what a playoff looks like without a conference champion. It's reality that the top four go. And you're you know what, you're getting the best team. The best team is winning the championship. With 8, you get a more true tournament where, if, and you see it in baseball where the best team doesn't necessarily win. Boise State could win an 18 tournament due to attrition, and I'm using Boise State as an example. And I don't know if college football wants that as a whole. They don't take kindly to Cinderellas, but they do like their meat and potatoes, and so far that's what we've gotten.
Hey, college football will sort of officially start early. We talked about week 0 at the very beginning of this talk, but is there really a start point other than the Alabama-Florida State game for a lot of reasons? I mean, here locally in the Atlanta area, the new stadium's opening up. Just the base. Most polls have those two teams 1-2, 1-3, 2-3, whatever. Just your quick impressions before we go about that game.
I think that's the real kickoff to the season. If Florida State ends up being number 2 in the preseason AP poll that's released August 21st, that would be the first time that's ever happened in a kickoff game, 1 versus 2, and the earliest 1 versus 2 game ever. I think it's already in the conversation for best season openers ever, because of many storylines. Alabama's number 1, returning, won all these championships. Nick Saban facing a former assistant. A Nick Saban assistant has never beaten him. Florida State's really good. And the fact that the loser, these two teams are so good, the loser could easily win the rest of its games, and you could have a rematch in the playoff.
Yeah.
So I think it's that good.
All right. Hey, Dennis, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. What you don't see here, we had a little glitches early, and you were very patient. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Glad to do it, Randy. Thanks.
All right, Dennis. Thank you so much. Dennis Dodd, the senior college football columnist for CBSSports.com. Next up, let's do it. Everyone loves a little butt hurt of the week. Well, everybody but the Matador. My daughter Kelly said, "Do you have to stay on this picture so long?" Matter of fact, Kelly, I think you're right. Let's get off that picture. There you go. See, that wasn't so long. Number 1, butthurt story of the week. And this is something that I just think is nothing more than extremely weird. And I think it's extremely weird. I got to read it in my local newspapers. I got to read about it in magazines. Those two things do still exist, that you don't actually read it online. They're the physical things you hold and read for you snowflakes out there. But I have to see these stories that the sex bot industry is booming. I don't mean kind of booming. In fact, to the point where this law professor warned Congress, you've got to have controls on the industry. It's just too weird. I mean, what was the movie, La Machina, about the computerized companion like this in the movie? But these are real sex bots. I'm talking about real companions that go along with some people. I don't know. I couldn't. Hold on.
She's a realistic-looking robot with soft skin and soothing voice.
The more you interact with me, the smarter I become.
She's capable of having a conversation, a romantic moment, and, well,
I feel very secure with you next to me.
Harmony is a redhead with green eyes, but she can be blonde or brunette. They are delivered in a large wooden box. Now,
that's
Matt
called a
wants
coffin.
to take the doll success a step further with Harmony, combining the silicone doll with realistic robotics.
Oh, man. This is a road we don't want to go down, but we're going anyway. Is it just me, or does that whole idea of coming in a wood box kind of freak you out? I thought you were supposed to go out in a wood box, not in a wood box. All doubled over and bent. And it's very, very strange. There's some countries where this is a lot more prevalent. But heaven forbid you should have actual physical contact with a human being and be able to interact with a normal human being. Sex bots. I guess I'm butthurt about it, but hopefully I'm not the only one. Next up, and the next 2 or 3 are from my favorite state. Yes, you're reading that right. A Florida man arrested for having sex with an alligator. But he was proactive. I'll give him some credit for that. He taped the alligator's mouth shut, and he actually taped its front paws, its front feet together. And his neighbors mentioned that he was having fun with Wally the alligator. And unlike most normal times when the human is the picnic on the alligator food chain, in this case, the alligator was on the other end, on the receiving end, you might say, of the food chain. Next one up, another Florida man. Don't you hate when this happens? When you have a little road rage, you slam those brakes on. You throw it in park, you think, and you jump out of your car to confront this person that's just pissed you off. Well, this gentleman forgot about the throw it in park part. He left his car and drive. He got out. He got in front of his own truck. And as a good Floridian will have happened to them on occasion, he managed to run himself over with his own truck. You got to love that. And the fact that it happens in Florida only makes it better. Okay, another Florida person. This guy robs a home, a residence, of a pretty good amount of jewelry. Now, that's illegal. That's terrible. What's he going to do with the jewelry? He decides he's going to go to a jewelry store and he's going to try to sell this jewelry he's gotten because he's robbed this house. Well, karma is a bitch. You rob a store and you rob a house, but when you go to fence it, when you go to sell your jewelry, you go back to the store that's owned by the woman that owned the house where you robbed in the first place to get the jewelry. Problem solved. That's a short circle to close in for the local police and for that particular jewelry owner. Just crazy. Also, next story up on our list. Guys will make mistakes with women all the time. Men are pigs. Men are stupid. This guy takes the cake above and beyond. Alert Guinness Book of World Records. He makes a date with 6 different women at the same bar at the same night, on the same night. Now, was he being efficient? Yes. Was he trying to find that special someone and so talk to as many people as possible? I guess that was his rationale. Unfortunately, the girls all got together. They figured out the story. They compared notes, and these 6 women basically stuck it to this dude at this bar, at this restaurant, en masse, let's say. So it was 6-on-1, but not quite the 6-on-1 that Sparky had in mind to start with. Next up in the butthurt division, a guy that used to run boxing. Bob Arum and Don King ran boxing for a good period of time. I'm going to say about 20 years. They were the promoters. And TMZ caught up with him outside of a local restaurant in LA, asked him what he thinks about, well, it's not his event, so you wouldn't think he'd be too flowery. Here's Arum's take and compliments.
The big fight's coming up soon. All right, Mayweather or McGregor.
Well, it's not much of a fight, right? There's one winner in the thing.
You think it's already decided? I mean, pretty much.
It's not. Listen, it's a different sport. There's not even a chance that McGregor wins.
No. I'm guessing Bob was on the way out of the restaurant, having had dinner and maybe a glass of wine or two before he did that interview. But what do you expect from a guy that's not promoting it, that's not making millions? Plus, he makes way too much sense, and that's not to be encouraged. Next up on the butthurt story of the week is something that some of you may not have seen this. And this was a map that was done. Judicial Watch did it. These are the various counties in California. Now, 100% is the amount of people that are of voting age, okay? Of voting age. Well, you shouldn't have over 100% registered. If you have 1 million people of voting age and you have 1 million people registered, that would be 100%. San Diego County, 138%. San Francisco, 114%. San Mateo County, where I used to live, 111%. Santa Cruz County, 109. LA County, 112. 12% of LA County is a buttload of people. That's over 1 million voters. That's unbelievable that they would have that many. You didn't hear much about this, but that would qualify as voter fraud. And somewhere in that, what is that? 3.6 million voters is that difference. So to me, I find it entertaining. People's heads will explode when you point this out. And I don't mean so much on the conservative side, but on the liberal side that this doesn't exist. Well, yeah, it does. So does CalExit, because that state is trying to get out of, they're trying to get out of being in the United States. That's what they're basically trying to get out of. Time now to go into a little real world news. All right, real world news. We'll start out with something that starts today. The PGA Championship starts today. Jordan Spieth is trying to be the youngest golfer to ever win the Grand Slam of golf. And that's all 4 of the majors during his career. He could do it potentially here this time. He'll do it at 23 plus, 10, 11 months old. Pretty strong stuff. He's got a really good chance. It's up at Quail Hollow, up outside of Charlotte, not too far from here, probably 3 or 4 hours drive. But there is more news about the PGA. They're moving the tournament to May. Why May, do you say? Well, here you're competing with football. In May, you're not competing with football. And that means television-wise, sponsor-wise, it's a little bit easier. So that means in April, you have the Masters. In May, you have the PGA. In June, you have the U.S. Open. And in July, you have the British Open. How about that? Smart stuff. Something the NFL started doing years and years ago, and that's make marquee appointment dates in almost every month of the year. Even when they're not playing, there's appointment type viewing when it comes to the NFL. Smart move by the PGA, moving this championship to May, and I think it's something they'll see ratings-wise a pretty good bump when it comes to that. Next up, when it comes to real world news, I love this story. It's probably about my favorite one of this group. And that is, you know what? Snitches get stitches. Been proven over and over again. And just because you're an NFL doctor and the DEA is putting a little pressure on you, don't rat out your boys. That's sort of a problem they're having. The DEA is putting a lot of pressure on NFL doctors, putting a lot of pressure on everyone, doctors in general, about opioids. And that's something that this administration is extremely serious about. Jeff Sessions, extremely serious about that. Not only cracking down on the drugs and how people get them, but also on how do you get people off these drugs once they're on them. But you see some of these emails, and the NFL for years has been putting out former players that are addicted to painkillers. No one talks much about it, but that's a real reality. Boomer Esiason, my colleague at CBS Sports, made a comment that every NFL player comes out of football with some form of brain injury or CTE. Well, it's not every player that has a pain medicine addiction that comes out. But, man, I'll tell you what, the guys that do, it is really, really nasty. Next up in the real world news, Trump's on vacation because they're renovating the White House. What you might not have heard much about is that Vladimir Putin is also on vacation. He's not going to Bedminster, New Jersey. He's going to Siberia. And, this guy, he rocks. When he goes on vacation, he goes full stream. Is it a Magic Mike thing? Is it a Game of Thrones thing? Is he going to take little Donald with him? This is my favorite picture. Yeah, he's got Miley up there with him in Siberia. But there's a difference. People talk about not acting presidential. How do you qualify exactly how that guy acts most of the time when the first thing he wants to do when he gets on a horse or gets outside is he wants to rip his shirt off? That's not very presidential. But here they laugh at you for saying not presidential. If you call him not presidential, he'll shoot you. Next one up. Well, bat poop crazy is a term that applies to a lot of people. But I got to be honest, when I think of the term bat poop crazy or bat shit crazy, I just think of one person, and that's Representative Maxine Waters from out in Los Angeles. She was asked in an interview, how about an all-black political party? Check this out. Besides the fact she laughed.
Policy.
Do you think black people should start their own political party?
To do what?
Should start their own political party.
No, not at this point. You've got to show that you're willing and you're able to put the numbers together and exercise your influence. We still are not voting our influence yet. I think what we should do is organize our power, exercise our power, particularly in the Democratic Party, because that's where most of us are. We should go to the conventions. We should be delegates. We should run for office, do all of that, and then you can raise that kind of question, whether or not we're strong enough to talk about organizing another party.
Got you.
Hold on. Do what? Well, that was my favorite part of that clip is do what? I think she maybe might have caught her off guard a little bit there. But that was an actual lucid answer with actual things that could happen down the road. But something about that doesn't seem right, that you would have an all-black political party. Does that mean we should have an all-white political party? Of course, people would argue that maybe we already have a couple of those. But Maxine, never, ever, ever a boring moment when it comes to that. You might not have been keeping up on the news when it comes to taxation in certain parts of the country. But in Philadelphia, they decided to put a soda tax on everything having to do with soda. Well, the result of that has been twofold. One has been soda sales are down. Number two, beer sales are up. Check out this news report.
In its first month, the soda tax in Philadelphia has brought in more than $5.5 million, more than double projections. That increase caused customers to change their habits and drink less soda. Now, Pepsi is laying off some workers in the region.
Oh, wow. Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? We got less diabetics, but more unemployed diabetics. I just love stuff like that. It's the unanticipated consequences at times, which seems pretty simple. If you're going to make a tax on something and the use of that something goes down, there's going to be a reaction to that, especially if that is a consumer product. You're going to need less people to do it if you're selling less of it, and that's what's happened in Philadelphia. More beer, less soda. I like that. Hey, how about this story? The last one we have here in our real world news. There's a guy, and again, I believe this takes place in Philadelphia. That is, he and his wife are looking for a house. So I'll save you reading this whole article. He gets on his bike and he's riding through these old neighborhoods. And he's talking to people on their porches and whatnot and asking them if they want to sell their houses. That's not a bad way to find a house, right? Well, the article that was written about this guy, they came to the conclusion that baby boomers are dominating the housing market because they're refusing to sell their homes of all ranges. Huh? Excuse me? You mean there's a life expectancy or a term that you can own a house? I thought once you got your house, which may be your dream home, excuse me, you can own it forever. Well, not according to this story, because it's the baby boomers, which are people my age approximately. I'm a little on the younger side of baby boomers, but owning their property and being selfish and hoarding their property and not enabling the younger people to get in on the markets. Okay, yeah, good luck with that. How about that? You think that's a planned community? Oof, I don't like that. That's not good. You will never find me. Anybody that's that, any place you live that's that planned, that's that geometric in formation, will never have me own a piece of property or a house in it. Hey, a new segment. We've lost for the week the tinfoil hat. But I don't know, you're going to like this one. And it's called Redneck Recognize. I think my man's got a toothless issue. Not too many toothlesses in his head. But this is, I came across, and if you have other ones of these that you would recommend, again, producer at unsafespaciesusa.com is the place to send the links and whatnot. But here's a nice little compilation of our redneck recognition for the week. The hotel bar. Oh! You don't think there's any alcohol involved there. Or how about here? Oh! Oh!
He's drunkard and shit.
Let her go!
Okay, driving a mower. Ooh. That's not all-terrain, I guess, on that vehicle. Now, how about this one? Just to do his buddy a little help, he collapses the board. Yeah, about sums it up. Oh, that will knock you out. You jump off something like that, you land straight down, but don't worry. Cooter's got a solution. He's going to pour a little beer on him and wake him up. But here's my favorite one. You shoot the beer, and you flatten all the other cans you ate.
YouTube the other night. I'm over at the Walmart, and I said somebody breaks in your house and they duct tape you up.
That's electrical tape. Sorry.
This right here is a Gorilla stuff. It's tough stuff.
Gorilla tape.
But they said that if it don't matter how they tape you up, if you do this simple move, you can get out of it.
Oh.
And we're going to try it.
It's kind of the redneck.
Put your hands on top of your head.
The redneck Bruce Lee. Hey! Ooh.
So you put your hands over top of your
Just
head.
don't do it
this.
down the middle.
Go straight down the middle.
No. Don't listen to him. One more. How about off the side?
Go out to the side.
Oh, yeah. Go off to the side. How great is that?
I'm dead.
I guess you're dead.
You go straight down.
Yeah, you're not getting out of that. You're a hostage.
Son of a butt. Maybe we should use regular duct tape.
Do not use Gorilla Tape when it comes to freeing yourself from that particular technique. All right, next up, we're getting towards the end. Here's the feel-good story of the week, and my favorite two hamsters, at least one hamster. Look at that. Look away. How about over here? Oh, he didn't look back this week. Doggone it. But our feel-good story of the week, this is a gentleman down in Texas. He's a U.S. postman. He's donated, and I don't have this number wrong, so save yourself the looking this up. He's donated 100 gallons of blood. Yes, 100 gallons of blood donated by this guy. Check this out. U.S.
A
Postman.
local postman is setting records for another kind of delivery that he makes, one that is saving so many lives. Just yesterday, Marcos Perez became the 4th person in South Texas to pass the 100-gallon donation mark, and he's here joining us live this morning.
Good for. Oh, whoa. We saw the before picture. That after picture is a little rough. But is that the 100 gallons of blood donor or the 100? No, never mind. That's a great story. There are people like that out there. Of course, there are people like me that had hepatitis as a child that can't donate blood. But whenever you get a chance, donate blood. If for nothing else, for yourself. Put it in your own little blood bank. You can do that. Check it out. It's not hard to do. All right. Want to thank you all for watching this week. Want to remind you where you can find Unsafe Spaces. And you can get it just about everywhere. You can get it on SoundCloud, YouTube, Facebook. It's on Twitter. We're on iTunes. And any suggestions, producer at unsafespacesUSA.com. Send those links and send those suggestions to producer at unsafespaces.com. That'll do it for episode 12, which means it's time for us to sing a little Happy Trails.
Happy trails to you until